Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bad and the Worst, a podcast where we analyse film trilogies and decide which film wasn't wearing their 2 million sunblock. I'm your host Griner, and joining me today...
I'm Luke Morgan, and if you don't have any insurance, I'm going to rip your balls off.
And I'm Conan, and I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Of course, we are doing the absolute classic Terminator. Boys, rewatching Terminator, how good was it?
So, interesting thing about the Terminator trilogy, I've always grown up loving Terminator. Like, the theme song's permanently stuck in my head. I hum it like once a day, usually, when I'm trying to psych myself up for the day. But going back to watch them again, I realised that I'd never actually watched Terminator 1. I remembered parts of 3, and I know 2 line for line, but I'd never actually watched number 1, or if I did, I was very young and I didn't remember any of it, you know? So it was
crazy.
It was a complete shock to me. Like, watching some of the stuff, I was like, oh my God, that's his dad. I didn't realize this. It's so much stuff blew my mind, and I'd forgotten about all the deeper lore stuff of Terminator. So it was a treat watching it again. I really enjoyed watching the first one.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, my first experience with the franchise was through T2 as well. So I remember sort of seeing that as a kid, being exposed to those action films I probably shouldn't have seen at that age. And I still have this really distinct memory of like going to school. I think I was in kindergarten or year 1, and like reenacting the final scene with my friend because I was like, "This is the coolest movie ever. This is what happens, and then we do this, and then this happens." And I'm like, "It's the stupidest thing in the world," but I loved it. And then I do remember seeing T1 a few years later, and you're not enjoying it as much, being a lot more scared by it, and being a lot more. So obviously, Terminator 1 is a horror film in a lot of ways, and it's a lot of scenes where I'm like, it's a lot more disturbing. And I remember sort of kind of not liking it for those reasons, but as I've gotten older, I think I've changed my opinion a lot more. And Terminator 3 is obviously the greatest letdown in the history of letdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar experience as well. Terminator 2 was my jam when I was young. I was far too young to see it. But I loved it, and then I'd seen Terminator 1 before, but not nearly as much as Terminator 2. And it was really nice to watch these movies in order and get that experience. And just there is a lot of nuance there that you don't necessarily get when you just watch Terminator 2 over and over again, as good as it is.
It's true. They've got a really good effect of like every film mirrors the last one so much. Obviously, someone else says a quote from the first one in the second one, and then in the third as well. And it's kind of like this great play on all these little things, or like they slightly tweak this and that, and so it really enhances the experience watching them all.
It really changed Terminator 2 for me. Like, I have such nostalgia for it, and like Conan said, I grew up watching it, being terrified of certain scenes, like the hand in the house where he's pretending to be the stepmom haunted me like as a child.
What's wrong with Wolfie?
And like, honestly, the T-1000 just made me scared of athletics carnivals for years. Anyone running behind me just terrified me. I thought it was the T-1000. But
that dude can run.
He can
Robert
run.
Patrick is a good runner.
Yeah,
he's a good Terminator. But yeah, watching the first one again, it made so much more stuff in the second one stand out and have more of an impact, and fun little callbacks made sense finally. Instead of, I always knew there was something I was missing, but it was really cool to watch it. So
Sarah's trauma is such a good frame for 2, but without getting too deep into it. Like, you get that from Terminator 1. Like, she's pretty airheaded. Like, I don't know. She's not much of a character, right? She's just this. She's along for the ride, but by the end of it, like the Terminator just crawling after her and her destroying it, like it's terrifying, and you can definitely see why she'd be traumatized in Terminator 2. The way she is.
It's probably the best handling of like a character progression into a sequel, like having it go from like sort of almost a cliche final girl, and then sort of overcoming that, killing the killer that's hunting her, and then becoming just like the ultimate badass. Like,
there is one other heroine who nearly
is it another James Cameron heroine?
It certainly is, yes.
I was going to say, like, I don't know if I'm sure we'll get into it later, but it just cannot be understated how influential James Cameron is on this like changing action philosophy and what he did for just like action characters and stuff. And you're right, the 2 biggest female heroines in cinema are James Cameron inventions. It's nuts that he did that.
And they are different too. Like, Sarah Connor is terrifying in her own right in the second movie. Like, where she's working out with her bed on its side in a mental asylum. Like that might be the most badass scene in cinema.
Yeah, such a great way to introduce a character, right? It's like you just know everything about them. Just straight away, you're like, all right, I'm behind this. Like, I get this person. I know what they're sort of doing. I know their focus and their sheer force of will. It's fantastic.
It was such a weird thing. Like after seeing Terminator 2 so many times all these years, going back and seeing the first one and seeing her be this like classic 80s damsel in distress, I was like, what? I've just always had this image of Sarah Connor being this badass, like hardened warrior without actually seeing what had made her that, you know? So to now watch number 2 and be like, it's such a good growth, like for her character, and it makes sense. And you see her like in the hospital and she's, it's messed with her, you know? And it's, such a good growth from 1 to 2, and then kind of symbolic how they handle her in number 3 as well. Symbolic of how they handled the trilogy.
How they fumbled and just
died off screen.
Shut the bed.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, let's get into it. The wooden spoon. I mean, we all know it's T3, right? No one's gonna throw a curveball at this one, are they?
It's not even worth making a joke. It's just that'd be sacrilegious.
No.
It's like...
I was planning on doing that the whole time, but I just can't do it. I can't bring my moral fiber and being to like talk up number 3 compared to the other two. It's such a stark contrast, and from the moment it starts, like I don't know, just the intro as well. Like the first 3 minutes of that movie, I'm sitting there and I was like, this feels like Matrix Revolutions. Like it just has weird, it has like bad 2003 movie vibes straight away. And I don't know, it's got a lot of problems. Yeah,
get into it.
Yeah.
Right. For me, the biggest thing is the tone is just so wrong, and it's all over the place as well. But the biggest example is those opening scenes. Like, I know they're trying to riff on Arnie going into this bar and getting his clothes and his boots and his motorcycle.
It's so frustrating.
But I don't know. It's just not even handled well. It's not funny. It feels like a parody movie. Like it doesn't feel like a smart callback or a smart anything. It's just like he walks into this stripper bar and the guy says, "Talk to the hand," and he grabs his hand and talks to it. Like it's so bad.
It's so bad. But man, I cracked up laughing throughout that whole scene. Every time, like every line in that is just so bad that it just cracked me up laughing. And the fact that he grabs the hand and talks into it just had me in stitches. But like,
I hate it so much.
That's Terminator 3. Like, to its very core, it feels like a parody of Terminator. The whole film, nothing has like any callback, like with a line or like anytime he's like, "She'll be back" or "I'm back." It feels so flat, and it's just like it's not. You're trying so hard to just call back to this line instead of it just being natural, and it's like Arnie feels like a complete parody of his like former things as well. It gives me so many questions about Terminators though, like Terminator 3, because like I don't understand. Is it just a natural born thing that's imprinted in their thing that they need to find leather jackets? Because it just seems to be that's all they look for the second they enter this world.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like they make this big deal about how this is not the same. This is not the same T800. Is it T800? T800 that that John Connor knew as a kid, and yet he's still going to a bar and getting a leather jacket and getting sunglasses. Like, doesn't make any sense for him to repeat this.
So this is kind of where the second one works and the third one fails, right? So the first one, obviously, he goes and he just appears in that random place and he goes and finds some punks hanging out. And so they're the first group of people that he sees. And so, okay, he gets their outfit because in the 80s, people dress like dominatrixes. And in the second one, same deal. He comes in right near a motorcycle bar, so he just goes to the nearest place, right? And then so it kind of fits that he's going for that thing. And in the third one, I don't think it does a huge issue because it's like he's in the desert for some reason, which also doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's like the nearest thing to that is another bar. But that's where it's kind of like in T2, he did intentionally make it different. He didn't just go and find punks. He found this motorcycle bar. And it ups the ante, right? It's no longer 3 punks who are picking a fight. It's a biker bar full of dudes. It's just like, okay, he's much more badass now than in the first one. And to have it this, it kind of it undoes that. It's like he's walking into a stripper bar, and he's doing the same sort of thing, but it is literally taking the piss out of it and just removing any tension, diffusing the sort of like the severity. It's
like, yeah, it's just the third one. Him going into that bar, it's just a joke. There's no like tension about it at all, and that's all of number 3. And like, I don't know. I mean, it's a whole nother question to wonder why like this male stripper at this hen's night is so effeminate. Like, he's meant to be. I don't know. I guess
it's the early 2000s. Like they're just There's no nuance there. It's just.
No, it's not.
Let's make him
the
gay
whole
because it's fun
punchline,
to laugh at gay people in the early 2000s. Like,
yeah, it's taking
exactly,
shots.
And it's so cringy. And I mean, that's the whole movie. But then he comes out and puts the glasses on, and it is just another joke of like, oh, look how
that's the part that just.
And then he's like, "Oh no, I don't like the style of these."
There's two ways that should go. Either he pulls them out, he sees them, and throws them away instantly because he knows they're not right, or he puts them on and just wears them because he has no idea what fashion is. Right? Like,
exactly.
It doesn't make any sense for him to put them on and remove them.
No.
Yep. Except for a joke in the movie.
You're eating your cake and like having your cake and eating it too. In that case.
I mean, it's worth wondering. Like, it kind of makes sense to put glasses on because it covers up his mechanical eyes, I guess. But there is the argument to be made in Terminator 2. It's like, why did he put the sunnies on? Because it's really badass. And that seems really cool. Yeah. And it's like, there are some... Terminator 2 does have some indulgences, which easily looked past because everything's so good in it. But things like that, where it's like, it's just pure style and it's really badass. And it's like, we're not, there's no need to dissect the logic of a Terminator unit.
And well, like you were saying, Lo, like it is sort of weird that he comes back and remembers some things and stuff like that. He opens the car and he does check the top for the keys straight away in number 3. So it's like, is that some? But it's, I don't know. It's just weird that they reprogrammed another one of the same Terminator again. It's just like, oh, well, now there's another one.
Yeah, and that's such a big point in 2 of him learning to be more human. Like, obviously, that's not something that was pre-programmed into him. Why does this Terminator know how to do that? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, the 3 just it feels so unnecessary. Like, it wrecked like the trilogy and sort of thing. It's like it has this good flow to it and has this thing. And 3 is such a stark drop in quality and pointless. Like, it didn't need to exist as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know that you said the thing earlier, Conan, about like everyone in the 80s dressed as like a dominatrix. But I mean, Terminatrix.
Yeah, they did.
Like, seriously, like, what is that? Like, it's
I've got some real issues with.
It's also the whole early 2000s of like over sexualizing a female. Like, it's a cool female Terminator, but she's not badass at all. And like the fact that she grows her boobs in like the second scene that she's in. To seduce the cop, but then doesn't even do anything.
Exactly,
with that.
She kills him anyway and
probably
takes the gun.
kills him anyway, and then never does anything about trying to trick a human again. It's just all action scenes and trying to kill people from there on out. So it's just a completely unnecessary scene.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I'll just get into it now. There is so much weird sexualization of that Terminator that's really like when she tastes John Connor's blood. She has she has a micro orgasm. It's the most unsettling thing. I'm like, this is so strange. Why is this happening? And the whole reason there is, you can tell producers are at the back just like, yeah, teenage boys will love that. It's like,
exactly.
That's so dumb. It's so silly. It's just this weird, creepy thing of like, we need some weird hook to sell this, which no one asked for and no one needed.
I mean, you've got Arnie being a Terminator. Like, what else do you actually need?
That's literally why people see this film. The covers of these continually just get less and less of Arnie until it's just his face. And it's like, it's obviously just Arnold Schwarzenegger you're coming here to see. Don't even need to do anything. Just show his square with his eyes, and that's it.
Yep. Same thing goes. I don't know what was up with the whole scene where she grabs the big Nokia brick phone and is just like.
She talks internet speak.
Starts faxing into the phone.
I like the idea of like her accessing the internet to get her information. Like, it's much better than her going to the phone booth and getting the phone book out. Like, it makes sense. It's just kind of dumb.
Am I right in thinking that because these films obviously have like that circular logic of someone comes back and causes the event that's already happened. Is she the one who comes back and by tapping into the internet, she starts the virus? Am I right in understanding that? Or was Skynet's virus already in there?
I mean, I never took that away from it. I don't think it's ever explained, but
I do not think that's that deep. Terminator 3 is that deep to have that. That's a good point, and that would make a really interesting thing. But I don't think it's that deep that they thought of that.
I don't know. I think these movies follow that timeline logic of every time like Kyle Reese goes back, that creates a new timeline. So it's not the timeline he came from that he's saving; it's this new timeline that he's in.
I don't even know if any of that makes sense in these films. They renege it so many times.
Yeah, they like, but I guess that's the beauty of 1 and 2. Like, you don't really care that much that the time travel doesn't make 100% sense. And I didn't really care in number 3, but that's because I was too busy being awed at how bad this movie is.
It's being sad. I do love in the number 1. Obviously, they're just like, he's like, Kyle Reese is like, I don't do the tech stuff. And it's like, cool. That's a great explanation for how this happens. You don't need to care.
Not a big nerd. Leave me alone.
Exactly. And then in T2, they never spend any time being like, how will this sort of happen? They deal with the philosophy more of it. They never delve into the science or like, how does this time affect this next universe? And I really like that because as soon as Terminator 3 could have a kind of cool philosophy where it's like Judgment Day is inevitable, we've got to stop trying to change it. But when they try to figure out the rest of it or try to add stuff in and be like, how is this functioning here? Yeah, it falls apart.
And I do find it interesting, like, these are 3 movies that one came out in the 80s, one came out in the 90s, one came out in the early 2000s. And for some reason, the one that came out in the 2000s is the one that looks visually worse and doesn't hold up as much as the rest. I know one, as soon as
one is rough in places.
It's got like 2 terrible scenes,
One's rough, but you can take that with like, it was made in the 80s, it's this and that. And then when you watch 3, though, it takes you out so many times because they really are like, look how much budget we're throwing at this. Like, all the set pieces, the fight scene with the Terminatrix and Arnie in the bathrooms at the end, like the bathroom stalls, is so bad. Like, it looks so bad. Like, they have no weight to them, and it's just everything's so over the top.
It's ragdoll physics. It ruins it. Like, that's
just say, like,
screws it up.
While 2, that fight at the end, like in the industrial zone, it feels heavy. Like, it feels brutal. And when Arnie gets like the pole through him, you feel it. You're like, oh man, this is brutal. And it's actually happening. 3, they do like 100 times more stuff, and you don't feel any of it. Like, she's grabbing his nuts, picking him up like he weighs 1 kilo, throwing him through 50 walls.
Yeah.
It's just so bad.
And even in Terminator 2, like the Galleria fight where they're fighting in that hallway and they're like pushing each other through walls. They're not throwing each other through walls. Like, there's you feel like these are 2 1-ton warriors fighting each other. They're not, neither one can throw the other one across the room, whereas in this one, they just throw each other across the room. And people get thrown across the room a lot in Terminator 3. And like, I mean, I've never been thrown across the room, but I feel like I would be injured after that. Like, I feel like I wouldn't be 100% after that happens. And these people just get up and fly a helicopter, fly a plane across the desert or whatever they're going to do.
Yeah, it's true. When that scene where she picks him up and like runs him through the bathroom, and it's just like, you see, he literally looks like he's a teddy bear, and like, it looks so stupid. And you're like, if she can do that with that much ease, anytime she hits any of them, it's like that should shatter every bone in a human body. There shouldn't be any like coming back from that. It's
there's some weird gendering in that scene too. Like, they're fighting in the men's bathroom and he's using a urinal to beat her up and stuff like that. Like, it's just so strange. It's such a strange scene to me.
Yeah, it is.
Everything with the Terminatrix is strange in that. Yeah, they keep going down the sexual route with her as well. Just even fight moves, like the way she wraps around him and so. It's just like, it's so playing to that teenage boy thing, but I don't think it's actually what teenage boys like. It's just what people thought.
No, I liked like her sticking her hand through the dude and driving the car. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. Like, that scene's not terrible.
Yeah,
what did you guys think?
Terrifying.
What did you think of the car, like the crane chase at the start?
I assume that's the scene that everybody, because I read a couple of reviews and they were like, it has one of the best scenes, or like one of the best sections of the whole thing. And I'm assuming that's what they're talking about, where it's that chase. And it's like, it's not that interesting because, again, too much is going on. It's got this crane destroying like cars on one side. It's got other things crashing on another side. It's got explosions in the background. And it is just that thing where it's just constant non-stop, like ground's getting torn up. Whereas the action in the other 2 is very contained and very impressive. Like that.
If you compare that to the chase, like with the truck and the bike in Terminator 2, like
the Canal Chase.
The Canal Chase is like cinema gold.
Good.
Like,
and the thing, there's not that much like there's so much happening, but there's compared to the crane chase, there's not that much happening. But there's like 3 moments.
Yeah, there's like 3 vehicles, 2 vehicles for half of it. Like,
exactly. It's just the tension, and it's just the like you're just so engaged. And when the truck flies off and just crashes, it's like, holy crap!
Yeah,
I didn't know they could do that.
Yeah.
And then this is just like, oh, apparently they can do anything they want, and I don't care.
And that's the thing in that scene, like it feels real, but in Terminator 3, it just doesn't. It feels like it's a CGI spectacle, and yeah, it's entertaining in the way where you keep being like, "Oh, holy crap!" Like when Arnie gets hit by the fire truck, it's like, "Oh, Jesus!" And then like he's like, "I'm taking over," and like sticks his hand through and
Yeah,
turns
I
the
think
fire truck around.
there's a couple good moments in that, but it's yeah.
But it's not like anything spectacular, and you're laughing, sort of like
Yeah.
entertained through it. It's
Because
not
even those
like,
are kind of funny. He's like, I'm taking over now. It's like, whereas in T2, Robert Patrick's like, get out. And it's like, all right.
Yeah.
You're going to slice me in half if I don't.
Did you notice, like, whenever Arnie would get hit by the crane or whatever, it'd be this big cartoonish dong noise? Like,
Yeah.
the sound in this movie, especially compared to Terminator 2, which, like, sets a new bar, like, is just... Ugh.
oh,
Yeah.
man.
Both the
Terminator.
scoring and the sound design, are just really bad.
Because Brad Fiedel does the soundtrack for number 3 too, doesn't he? Like for 3 as well. I'm not sure. I know he does them for the first 2, and I swear he did it for number 3. But the music seemed bad in number 3. Like it was way
There's a
like
noticeable shift.
No, number 3 is a different recorder.
Yeah,
Marco
different composer.
Beltrán,
So exactly.
But he did like Logan and stuff, so he's not untalented.
But
he
was 20 years ago, obviously. He's still learning.
Oh, touche.
It seems like the music in this seems like the music playing in an action movie in the background of a sitcom TV show, like when they're sitting on a couch watching an action movie, and it's like and that's all that this one is. Like it's not cool.
You're right.
Yeah.
Another thing I found really disappointing in 3 is that they had an interesting premise there that they could have gone with of John being this kind of screw up and not living up to this destiny that he thought he had, and how this destiny can only happen if there's a huge amount of suffering. Like I thought that could have been a really interesting theme, but they just so mishandle it. Like they kind of play it a couple of times, and that's it. They don't really dig into it like they could. Like I think there's an interesting character arc there, and I just don't think they pull it off.
But there's no character. Yeah, there's a great arc, but there's zero character or development in this film. Compared to 1 and 2, like 1 is Sarah Connor's complete transcendence from like victim to badass killer. Number 2 is the best like father-son story ever. And it's like you've got a machine learning to be human. Like there's this great character in both of those, whereas in the third one, none of them are characters. Like he's given a lot more dialogue, but he doesn't grow at all. He's already kind of there. And then Nicole Reese doesn't change. Claire Danes doesn't change.
You mean John Connor?
Oh, I don't care. He's not even Nick Stahl is a terrible choice.
Yeah.
Like I was gonna say, like, we'll get into John Connor because I think he's not good in number 3. But I do like what you were saying. Like, there is that scene where he's in the back of the van with Claire Danes, and he says, like, imagine this scenario where you're like the greatest thing you'll ever achieve, and it's this possibly the most important thing in history, but something bad has to happen. That's an interesting thing for him to basically be like, kind of wanting it to happen, because he's like, we stopped it from happening. What is my life now? I'm just like on this thing, and sort of having that thing of like, I was meant to be great. I got talked up as I was this thing, and it's just, was it real? Like, is anything actually going to happen? Or that whole arc, but it's never really goes any deeper than that.
It could have really been explored, but I guess everything that's good about that is what is set up by Terminator 2. Like none of that. Terminator 3 doesn't earn any of that. No, it's all on Terminator 2's shoulders.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I don't know. Even little things like the voiceover in number 3 is much like it's used really sparingly in Terminator 2, and it's surprisingly like, you know, rule of thumb is voiceover's bad. You shouldn't use that. But in some films, it can work. Like Lord of the Rings, it's necessary and it works. And in this, I think in Terminator 2, it works well. It's like really sparse. It's at the beginning and it's at the midpoint, and it kind of provides that necessary like injection. Whereas in this, the whole thing starts and it's just like it's badly done. It's a huge dump. He's just like, here's what I've been doing for the past 10 years. Like, why don't you just show me that? I don't. And it's just
do
really
we even need it anyway? Like, we can see him
even better. Yeah, even better.
A vet to get drugs. Like, obviously, his life's not going how he wants it to.
Yeah, but it's trying to stick with that. Oh, Terminator films have narration, so we'll have this narration. It's like it's crappy.
And I do like the whole aspect that Judgment Day is inevitable and it's going to happen. And I do like how they get tricked into bunkering down at the end. I do like that, where it's like, oh, crap, it's going to happen. It feels kind of cool, like that it's happening, you know, like we're witnessing that Judgment Day that's been talked up and everything like that. It doesn't feel cool because the movie's not cool. And then But yeah.
But the thing about it is, like, there's a big theme in 1 and 2 that there's no fate but what we make for ourselves. Like, there's this big theme that nothing is inevitable, and yet Terminator 3 is just like, no, Judgment Day is inevitable. Sorry. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
yeah, you're right. It does come.
maybe I'm not. Maybe I should be okay with it, but I feel like it's just spitting in the face of what's been set up before that.
Well, I guess then there's a question of like what was Cameron's vision for the next one, because he wanted to originally make a third Terminator, but then things went wrong and never happened. So it's like, what would have his idea been? He obviously had some idea for the story to continue. So I guess he was like, something bad's going to happen again, even though they stopped Skynet. So I don't know what he's thinking in terms of like if he has that same idea for the long term, or if he's like, no, something else happens which changes it, or what.
I mean, it's just life, isn't it? Because it's like eventually technology is going to keep advancing, and this thing will happen. And it's sort of what sci-fi always builds up, that AI will grow smart and wipe out humans because we're horrible. But I guess that's all it has to do for a third one, is go that same route, as eventually something else will happen that'll eventually lead to this thing being built. People will constantly get smarter and build a better, processor and all that, like a fancier chip and everything like that will lead to this AI. But yeah.
LA in that version also looks a lot nicer. In 1 and 2, LA looks like a real crap hole, even like in 1984 or whenever. Like, I think it's based in like 1987 technically, and they're based slightly in the future. But LA in both of those first 2 films looks really gross, whereas in this one just looks like a really ordinary city. I'm like,
it doesn't even have that sense of place like the other ones.
No, it doesn't.
Like, just it's weird. And did you know? Have you guys ever noticed there's no traffic in Terminator movies?
Yeah,
very convenient for car chases and anything else you want to do.
And from what I've gathered, LA is the motor city, so yeah, some problems there.
A lot of problems.
All right. There. Do you guys think this deserved to be a trilogy? I mean, obviously they flubbed it, but could it have been a good trilogy?
Honestly, like, I don't think so. Like, it could have, hypothetically, but 1 and 2, it could have ended at 2 and been perfect. Like, it's a great film and a great sequel to it that tells like a different story, tells it in a different way where it's more of an action, like going the whole alien sort of route where it's like horror to more action focused, telling a different story, and then having the end where they sort of prevent Judgment Day, but you don't know. Like, there's always that uncertainty that something might happen again, and that's fine. Like, obviously, I'd probably be saying something different if a third one came out and it was amazing, but it didn't. And the third one was so the thing that struck me throughout the whole of it was just, this feels so unnecessary, and it feels like it's just there just to be another Terminator film and just to make more money. That's all it feels like it's there for. It doesn't serve a purpose at all.
It is a weird thing, yeah, where it's kind of like the Matrix. It's got this big universe that seems ripe for dipping into, and you can constantly just bring out stories in this world and be like, here's what happens in between 2022 and 2026 or whatever. But I don't think James Cameron envisioned that originally, and I don't think, and even with Terminator 1 and then with Terminator 2, I again don't think he was dipping into it. It's like Judgment Day and those feels like this vague sort of, it's like it's a MacGuffin almost, like this weird plot device of like, this is why we're doing what we do. Whereas the lore behind how they reach there, like the time travel stuff, really isn't important in the first couple.
No.
And so it's kind of like, it doesn't. But then the third one does a thing where it's like, well, we're a trilogy of films. We need to flesh out this broader universe, which is why there's six films and a TV series. And it's like, it shouldn't be like that. If it was a trilogy of good films in the universe made by James Cameron, I think it would be fantastic. But I think by going down that way of like, well, let's really just explore the Terminator universe, it falls apart because I don't know if it's a great universe. Like, I don't think it's got the thoughts there. I don't think it's really like this elaborate sort of sci-fi timeline of like, here's every step. I think he's just like, the machines rise, Judgment Day happens, and as soon as you try to make it bigger than it is, it falls apart. What's important is the human stories.
It's got the potential to have like interesting stories told in that universe, but then that's the thing, I don't think it belongs in a trilogy. Like, you can have them 2 movies and then have a TV series like down the line, or a spin-off movie that's on its own, that's not tied to this cast or other stories in that universe. But when they keep coming back to it, and I think
the universe isn't there though. Like, the universe there's no universe really set up in number 1 and 2. Like, there is, but it's not fleshed out. It's not this. Yeah, it's not this deep, detailed universe. it's like Conan said, it's the human stories that we get out of it
And
that's
they did it
important.
with Terminator Salvation. They tried to be like, here's the universe outside of this. Here's what it looks like now, and it falls apart. And part of it is because Terminator is a film's about machines pretending to be human in contemporary society, right? And so as soon as you sort of be like, oh, but what about the cool one where there's machine, like the battles out there? I don't know about you guys. I think in Terminator 1 and 2, all the scenes in the future are the most boring parts. Whenever it
Mm.
shows you the war scenes, it's like they're necessary, but you're not like, I'm really invested in this huge battle. It's like, no, this is redundant. What I'm interested in is what's going on when there's a robot pretending to be a human. And so as soon as you try to flesh that out and be like, what about the politics post Judgment Day? It really doesn't matter, and it's really not interesting.
Have you guys seen the alternate ending that they had for Terminator 2?
Funny
No.
story. I have the super ultra limited edition DVD release of this,
Right.
and it's at my sister's house, so I couldn't watch it. But I've watched it with all the deleted scenes and that alternate ending. So.
Yeah, I also like that. Like, I've seen the director's cut with the deleted scenes. I do like that. I might talk about that later. But yeah, like the original, one of the alternate ending was Sarah Connor sitting on a park bench with her grandchild, watching her son play with her grandchild, and saying basically,
August 29th, 1997 came and went. Nothing much happened. Michael Jackson turned 40. There was no Judgment Day. People went to work as they always do. Laughed, complained, watched TV, made love.
John Connor's a member of the Senate now, and that's how he fights for good. Judgment Day was averted.
Oh wow!
Like, they basically just wrap it up and say, "There's nothing else after this. We fix the problem."
And I mean, I'd be happy with that in a way.
So would I. It's not a bad
Yeah.
ending.
And I bet the only reason they didn't go with that was let's leave it open for another one down the line in case we want to dip into this cash cow again.
Could have been.
Definitely feels that way.
Executives
Yeah.
interfering in the creative process of it, I think.
I mean, it's always nice having that open ending. Like in the end, Terminator 1, the ending's kind of open. It's like, what? And then in Terminator 2, I think they do a really good job at answering what happened. But like it ends in like, is she going to go fight? Is she going to go hide? Is it all going to go bad? It's nice to have that. So I'd probably feel a little bit like, if the ending of Terminator 2 was just like, it's all happy now. But at the same time, knowing what we get afterwards, like I would probably prefer that ending.
So did they film it? Like you can watch that alternate.
You can watch
ending?
that on YouTube. It's all there. It's filmed.
Oh wow!
Like everything's there.
Because that's interesting. Because then in the final cut, there's not really an ending scene. There's just the
road,
like the footage of the road, which feels sort of just like it finishes out of nowhere. Like not out of nowhere because there's obviously the big payoff with Arnie and everything before that. But then there's just that she says like 2 lines and then
it's just them driving off into the night. Yeah.
So it's interesting that they filmed that whole other thing. It seems like that was maybe their original idea.
That probably was, yeah.
I like it better.
All right. So who are we going to blame for Terminator 3?
I
think it's got to be the writers just didn't. I don't know. The writers and the director just didn't understand the tone that they needed to have. They didn't understand what made the other movies good and cool and interesting. Like as you said, they just over sexualized everything, and the tone's just so wrong.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. I think they understand what was cool in number 2 and 1, but don't have the depth to make it cool, and they just keep calling back to be like, "How cool is that? Let's have Arnie say that line again, but it's about her now." So it's just like it's like fans of it that have no writing talent just made the third one, and we're like, let's keep calling back and doing cool little things, but they're not cool or entertaining. And that's why it feels like a parody of the first two. Like it, writing wise, everything, it just feels like a parody of the first two.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a recurring theme on this podcast. Like it happened with Indiana Jones. It happened with maybe not the Matrix. It happened with something else. But that idea where a different creative group takes over a property, and they just sort of say, okay, what made this good? Or was that? Oh, yeah, I guess that's what was good about this. Let's do that. And they don't understand it properly, and it really does make it fall apart. Like it's what happened with Temple of Doom, where you got people playing at this thing rather than really knowing it. I'm like, so Jonathan Mostow, the director, he's just done nothing good. He did Breakdown in 97, U571 in 2000, Surrogates, the Bruce Willis film. Like he's your go-to director for bad generic action films.
Terminator 3 is just full of people who went on to do not a whole lot.
Yeah. And then the writers, the same similar deal. They wrote The Net, writers of Surrogates. They wrote The Game, the David Fincher film, which is good because of Fincher. So it's just it's handed off to these. and it comes back to that James Cameron, like his films or hate his films, he's a visionary and he is a pioneer and a trailblazer in like the truest sense of the word. And so to have this property in someone else's hands, it's like it was never going to be good because it's just who he is, like his property, his entity, what his vision for films are. And you see it obviously with Titanic, with Avatar. Everything he does is just like, it's not just a film, it is a cultural movement. It is like history being shaped. And to just have it sort of pass off to these guys, it's like, we're making just a film. It's like, well, yeah. And then you look at like what Terminator 2 was, just pushing every boundary in terms of technology, in terms of like visual effects, all this stuff. They were just trying to make something great. And with this, they're just like, we're trying to make a film. And all the enthusiasm is lost behind it, I think.
It's got a bigger budget. Like it feels like that should be the right thing to do, but they just, James Cameron is really, to me, like especially after watching it again and just seeing how much better his two movies are than the third one. James Cameron really is what the glue that made these movies work. I think.
In a lot of ways, they shouldn't have worked. Like they're very strange concepts when you really look at it, and when you separate them from the cultural significance, they're kind of like these should have been bad, like sci-fi films lost in like 70s VHS tapes. But just because of who he is and what he did with it, it's like they became like possibly some of the most significant films ever made.
Definitely
like
in terms of action movies.
Like Terminator 2 defined action for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And so, it's like it's in anyone else's hands. It shouldn't have worked, but he found a way to.
What we'd see in anyone else's hands, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, 4 different directors, 4 different
And
films, all garbage.
That's the thing. I don't know if it's probably a combination of like the writing, the directing, and everything. But the Terminatrix is just bad. Like I think she's not a great actress.
She's not an actress. She's a model.
Oh, well, that explains everything.
Yeah, so
okay. So
that's a big issue.
She's not a good actress at all. All the scenes, like of her licking the blood, and it's just everything. Obviously, it's directing as well, and obviously they've casted her then because she's a model. But she doesn't feel threatening ever, and she's meant to be like this ultimate Terminator killing Terminator. And she just doesn't feel like it. It just feels like she's. Yeah, doesn't feel threatening at all.
It feels like it should be a good idea. Like the whole thing about Terminator 2 is like, oh, he can't form complex machines. He can only form like swords and blades and stuff like this. Whereas this is the Terminator that can form complex machines. She can make a saw. She can make a plasma rifle. Like this should be the Terminator that takes everyone down. But she never feels scary. She never feels threatening. And like she has the shapeshift ability that the T-1000 has, but she never uses it like he did in that movie.
She uses it one time, yeah.
She uses it to grow her boobs. That's literally the only time.
She does pretend to be like Leto.
She becomes a fiance, yeah.
But then immediately transforms so that the Terminator can shoot a rocket launcher into her face, which was kind of cool.
But that's the thing. Like, it also just feels unnecessary. Like, she has the saw, but it seems like it's way more difficult for her to cut into the roof of the car than it was for him to use his bloody silver sword and just he was just jabbing it through. And she's like, like it just doesn't feel. It feels like it's gone backwards in technology. Yeah. It's not this super slick sword. She's like using ancient technology.
And even the plasma rifles, I thought it was so dumb. Like it says that it speaks to that CGI with like we can do explosions everywhere now. But it's like it causes more harm than good. She's just like shooting, it just blows things up that get back, like that hinder her. Whereas T-1000's got that real sense of just like he's an assassin, right? It's like he will just come up to you and slice into you. And it's like he feels like this predator like skulking through the night, whereas she just feels like this freaking chainsaw that's dropped on the ground, just going everywhere, cutting everyone up. Like there's no sense of precision or even the scenes that should be horrifying with her, like when she comes to the drive-thru and just shoots that guy through the window, or goes to the party and just kills that kid. Like they should be these incredibly horrific moments where it's like this dominatrix is a cold-blooded killing machine, more frightening than Robert Patrick. But they just they don't spend any time with it. It's literally just like she knocks on the door, shoots him, and you don't see anything, and then she walks off.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, okay.
Like compare that to the scene where the T-1000 kills John Connor's foster parents. Like that scene is so much more horrifying, so much cooler, but it's a similar idea. Like it's not that different of a scene,
and it's stuck in my head 20 years later. Even him killing the cop in front of the vending machine with his finger.
Yeah,
horrifying. It's absolutely it's evil.
It's horrifying. But she's just like pulls up and like, you forgot my nuggets, and shoots him through the drive-thru. Like it's not. It doesn't feel threatening at all.
Ultimate Karen.
That's what they should have done. Modern day Terminator. She's just a Karen.
Brilliant.
All right. Do you guys think there's anyone that deserved better? Was there anybody who, was better than the source material in this movie?
Can I just mention real quick? It is worth noting that T3 suffered from a lot of like the franchise issues leading up to it. Like franchise rights kept swapping back between different groups and companies.
Mhm.
One company went bankrupt, so there was a huge back and forth, and that's why James Cameron sort of lost interest in it because it was just too hard of a process.
Yeah.
And so as with anything that spends a lot of time in limbo in Hollywood, I think that's a big part of the issue. Like people lost enthusiasm, just companies wanted different things.
If you look at the writing credits on IMDb, there's like 3 or 4 people involved. Like that's never a good sign either for something like this that should have a vision.
Yep, 100%.
So,
Luke, you were going to say?
In terms of who deserves better, the only one I came up with after watching number 3 was Claire Danes. I feel like she deserves better. She's a great actress. Disagree?
Prove
Is she?
Prove
I
it.
think she's a great. I really like her in Homeland. But I like her in this. I feel like in this she's the only one that feels like an actor that's acting. Like I don't know, her performance feels real. I feel like. Obviously, she gets over the death of her fiance really quickly, like within 20 minutes. But I don't know. I feel like I was more invested in her, like her personality and her acting and everything like that, more than John Connor or anything like that.
I'll agree with that.
Honestly, like I think the only scene that I actually thought was funny, and I was like, oh, I like the scene where they find out that she can direct the Terminator, and he's like, I don't want to know how I die, and she's like, how did he die?
Yeah,
and that cracked me up, and like she's like asking him all this stuff, and he's just answering it in front of John Connor. I thought that was funny, but that's the only thing I came away with that she deserved better. I think I deserve better after watching Terminator 3. Like Terminator fans deserve better.
They definitely are the victims.
Yeah.
Like imagine waiting. Was it 12 years and getting Terminator 3?
This was me. Like, it wasn't quite 12 years, but like I saw this movie in the cinema. I was so keen for it, and it just was great.
See, I didn't suffer through that. I saw it both on once on TV and Terminator 3 on DVD. Well, maybe it was VHS back then. I can't remember. But I can imagine how much of a letdown that would be for you. So
the worst thing is Terminator's done this to me twice because I was so keen. I was so keen for Salvation. I thought Christian Bale. How can they go wrong?
I think we saw that together, didn't we?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did, and it was bad.
Yeah,
so bad that I saw Genesis on a plane, and I haven't seen Dark Fate. Like,
yeah, I saw Genesis at the movies, and I was like, why do I keep doing this to myself?
I had this same conversation with Alicia. So with Terminator 3, like I loved Terminator 2 growing up, and then Terminator 3 was just a thing years after it came out, and I was like, oh, I'll rent it on DVD and I'll watch it because I was like, oh, I really like the second one. That's how it goes. And I didn't remember anything from 3 when I rewatched it recently, so obviously blocked out that bad part of my memory. But then I got hyped for Salvation and I watched that at the cinema. I don't remember anything from that movie,
nothing
except that there's a scene with CGI Arnold. And then again, I watched Genesis at the cinema. I was in a different town at the time, and I was just like, "Oh, what's on?" And I was like, "I'll just go to the cinema. Oh, watch the new Terminator." And yeah, I read the Wikipedia on it yesterday to just catch myself up after watching 3. I was like, "Oh, what happened in the other ones again?" And reading it, I was like, "Oh man," I was like, "It gets pretty bad after even 3." So
yeah, I don't know.
And I haven't watched Dark Fate either. But I was keen on watching Dark Fate.
No, I
too,
knew this would happen.
I just haven't had a chance.
Everybody was like, "No, man, Linda Hamilton's back. It'll be great." I'm like, "No, James Cameron's not directing. It's not going to be great."
He was involved though.
He was producer, yeah. But
I guarantee it's better than Salvation and Genesis, and probably better than 3. I am interested in watching Dark Fate now, though.
We should watch it together.
A few lists that I read were like Terminator. They ranked 1 and 2 as the best 2, and then Dark Fate is the 3rd best. So I was like, okay, that's worth something, I suppose.
I am interested in watching like Linda Hamilton back as Sarah Connor. Like I was keen for that when the first screenshots came out and everything. I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. This is going to be cool. But we'll see how we go.
Yeah, one day.
Let's do a watch along. Our reactions.
Should, I reckon. All right, you guys got a quick fix for this movie?
I think there's a cool film to be made about. So Terminator 2 deals with John Connor, the fatherless orphan, sort of getting a father and losing that, and sort of then it deals with Sarah Connor's. She has to sort of come around on machines, right? I think there's a cool film to be made in this where he has to almost like he has to be the one to kill the T-800, and he has to sort of be the one to like fulfill this circle of, even though he's now he loves machines, he's like, you're my father. He actually has to kill this thing that he loves and become the leader of the resistance. And I think there's a cool story there to be like, this is his life. And what you said before, that idea of like he's a complete screw up, and he's trying to sort of deal with this whole, my life has no meaning unless this great tragedy happens. By him doing that great tragedy, I think there's a cool story there. Like he leads into it, and he has to kill this one thing that he sort of loves and connects, and he becomes the leader of the resistance. And that nice irony of like he's lost everything, but he's also saved everything. I think there's a real sense there, and like he finds purpose. And you probably need Linda Hamilton back for that somehow. But
yeah,
that's
just don't kill her off screen from cancer.
No,
that's all you have to do. Like she's just still there. Have it be like he has to kill his father figure. I mean, Conan, he just wrote a better movie than number 3, like on this podcast. So there we go. But
hear that, James
honestly,
Cameron?
My note on that of what could be fixed is I would have liked, and it sort of lines up with what Conan was saying, it to go back to a Terminator against human conflict.
I was going to say the same thing. I would be happy if it went back to a more simpler conflict.
Yeah, have John Connor and even Claire Danes or Linda Hamilton again fighting against this Terminator again, instead of these two Terminators going at it and one's more advanced than the last one again. And because that just led to the CGI fest. Even if it went back to sort of a horror vibe of them being hunted down by a Terminator and John Connor having to do that and dealing with the emotional thing of not wanting to kill that Terminator because of his emotional connection to it, I think that's 10 times better than what we got.
Yeah, that could work as a really cool return to horror roots. I guess, how would you up the ante in that version? Because obviously Terminator 1 has one Terminator. Terminator 2 has 2 Terminators.
Well, then the only way to go is to bring 3 Terminators.
Just bring in 3. Is
the 3 amigos.
Is Robert Patrick the hero in the third one? And
yes.
Arnie's actually the villain again? Oh, that's the story.
Robert Patrick and Robert Pattinson.
Robert Patrick needs more Jews.
Did you guys hear that the original plan was to have Michael Biehn play the T-1000?
Yeah, that would have been very cool.
Would have been, but anyway,
he's awesome though.
Oh, yeah, Robert Patrick. I can't. He's so good in that film, and it's like his career suffered through it, unfortunately. But he's such a good actor, and he really could have. Yeah, it's a shame he didn't get more.
So does Nick Stahl stay on in the fix?
I don't know. I bet he's good in Sin City when he plays that yellow bastard because he's covered in makeup. Like I think he plays that role.
Oh my god, is that him?
Yeah, and like you see him that
he's the Teletubby.
He's the really creepy son. Like he's the son. So you see him in that one scene before he gets like ripped apart by Bruce Willis. I don't know if he's a good actor though.
I'm not convinced either. But I do think you want someone like, I don't know, Michael Biehn has this like he's this scrawny, intense guy. I feel like that's what John Connor should have been.
Yeah.
In the third one, which Nick Stahl probably has like the frame for it, but he just wasn't. He's not that character.
Yeah, he's got no intensity or like he's very weenie, and he really is like I get that's necessary for the whole. He's reluctant and he's worn down, but you never see any hint of potential change or like this hero in him. Even like Edward Furlong, and we can talk about Edward Furlong later because I've got a lot of thoughts on him. He has that kind of like, he's weenie and his voice is breaking, but he's also kind of badass. Like he's breaking into things, he's stealing money. Like, and so you can see this guy could actually do all this stuff. Whereas all Nick Stahl does is he breaks into a vet and like takes some animal medicine. And he's got a paintball gun. Like he doesn't even have a real gun. It's really.
And then he gets locked up in a cage. Like he's not.
Yeah,
he's not clever.
Yeah.
So who would you cast as John Connor?
It's hard, eh? I did think about it a bit.
Early 2000s.
Yeah.
Early 2000s Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have Nathan Fillion in anything in that time. Jared Leto. Jared Leto, actually. No, I've convinced myself that'd be kind of cool.
I could actually see it a bit.
He has the weird frame and the sort of intensity, actually.
Like Panic Room, Jared Leto.
Yeah. Yeah, he's evil in that, man. Yeah, okay, Jared Leto, it's done.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah,
or Tom Cruise.
Why not just go like Brad Pitt or something?
Should Tom Cruise have been the Terminator in Terminator 2 with his running?
I think Robert Patrick is a better runner.
Ooh.
Terminator 2,
Robert
he runs,
Patrick.
dude.
He runs hard.
He's running, as far as I'm concerned. He's running. He's just Robert Patrick. That's all I consider.
And Tom Cruise is a great runner, don't get me wrong, but I think Robert Patrick also convinced me that he's a robot while he's running.
Mm.
Tom Cruise has this football player style of running to me.
Yeah, I guess he does look like he's getting worn out. Robert Patrick never looks like he never breaks a sweat. That's like
He's still running, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Like, he's just
he's never stopped. Yeah, you're right, Robert. I guess in a runoff, who wins that?
It's a great question. It's a question for the ages, really.
Yeah.
next time.
All right. So, is anybody going to say Terminator 1 is the best film?
Yes,
Are you actually?
I am.
Really? Terminator
Really?
1?
Yep.
I was going to say, let's talk about Terminator 1 before we talk about the best one. But if you want to go that it's the best film.
I mean, we can talk about this and then move on because it's super close, but I think my vote will go Terminator 1.
What puts it over Terminator 2?
All right. You know how much I love a good scruffy underdog story, and this
Mm.
idea of James Cameron just making this small indie film where he's like, I want to make this thing that's like coming out of nowhere. I had a dream about a cyborg with red eyes coming after me, man. Like I imagine that guy coming to you and being like, this is the film that's going to make me big, and everyone's like, yeah, no, stop shelving Eckies. That I love the fact that he made this phenomenal movie, and like, I'm a big horror fan. I love. So they call it tech noir as like this fusion between horror and sci-fi. That's his
James
sort of
Cameron calls it tech noir.
Yeah, sorry, he does. Yeah, no one else does. So it's just a horror film. I love those vibes. I love that it's like it feels like sort of the slasher film moving into the future. I think I don't know. There's something. I think it's a leaner film. It has. It feels more punchy. It feels rougher, and I really kind of like that about it. And yeah, I think you can't take. I can't separate it from like obviously Terminator 2 had an incredible impact, and I'm in no way belittling that. But like it started with Terminator 1 and how that changed the direction of what was going to happen with like just how it shot Arnold Schwarzenegger's career up and sort of started this thing, and how it just changed like this, and then just started James Cameron's career. Like it all started with Terminator 1, and I think it is. I think it's a leaner, more contained film. Like Terminator 2 is fuller. Whereas, yeah, T1 is just like, it's a gut punch. Terminator 2 is like a pummel.
Yeah. So, like, Terminator 2, to me, is the movie that Terminator 1, like, that James Cameron wanted Terminator 1 to be.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one movie, but we've gotten two out of it, which we're blessed for, I suppose. But, like, Terminator 1 is great. And, yeah, you're right. What it did and the horror vibes of it are really, really good.
Like, that's, like, yeah. Like, the massacre in the police station is just, like, it's terrifying. And it feels like it has that contained energy in all those moments. Even when when Michael Biehn is stalking the streets, like trying to hide from the police, and it's like it's shot in such a good way where everything feels trapping. Like the alleys are really tight, the streets are disgusting, the bar is cramped. You always feel like you are like you can't breathe. Whereas Terminator 2 is a lot more laid out. LA is really focused on as like this huge city. And yeah, I think that really works for like this idea of what the Terminator is. Like the Terminator is a mindless killing machine. It feels natural for it to be a horror film, whereas Terminator 2 takes that and goes, well, it's actually a father-son story. And it's like, that's fine, but I like the essence of T1 more.
Here's the thing. So my vote goes to number 2. But there's definitely an argument for number 1. And watching it for the first time, I was like pleasantly surprised about how much I enjoyed it. Like, it gives me, Blade Runner vibes. It gives me fugitive vibes. Like, I like that gritty thing of like the dirtiness of the city, and that it is horror. Like, it does feel way more scary. Like, even her in the nightclub and him just like walking up just to kill her, it feels so much more intimidating. And I do feel like what you said. Like, I do like the Terminator versus the human element. It feels way more like dire, like they're screwed. If he catches them, like they're screwed, instead of having this protector thing. I do think 2, you said it's fuller. I do think 2 is a bit bloated. I think it's a bit too long. Like, it's an extra 15 minutes too long or so.
Yeah, I agree.
And because it's a lot more action focused. I know my wife agrees. She liked number 1 more after watching them recently. She didn't beforehand, but watching 2, she was like, it's still got another half an hour, and she's like, and there's a lot of action scenes. While she liked the intensity of number 1 a bit more, I will say my only issues with number one is I thought the scariest scene is a horrifying prosthetic Terminator as he's like in the mirror before he puts his sunny on. It's
Yeah, that
horrifying.
scene's
He looks.
No,
It
the
doesn't
most
hold up at all.
the most
man.
horrifying one is when he's coming up the hallway and they're trying to close the door, and you can like see the shimmering edge of the green screen.
yeah,
It's just like, oh, that looks so awful.
But
yeah. Both
It's the 80s.
Yeah, both of those
Yeah.
scenes don't hold up very well though. Like that stop motion Terminator looks bad.
yeah, when he's like
And
walking at the end,
pros-
and
yeah.
it just looks like robot chicken. But
Yeah.
it does it feels raw. Like it does feel like it's an 80s horror thing of this evil machine, and it is cool like that. And there were several times throughout it where I was like, oh, this feels like Alien, but with a machine instead of like an alien. It's
Yeah,
gave me them vibes. And I think there's even parallels with the way scenes are shot, you know, sort of. There's one in particular
Yeah.
like, where the alien's like in front of her, like with its mouth, like with his hand, like reaching out in front of her. I thought it was very
Yeah,
similar.
I think you can tell how much like Alien did sort of like the influence that it had on sci-fi and horror, and in this film, like it definitely is inspired a lot by that, and then it's obviously inspired by Assault on Precinct 13, like the John Carpenter action film. So this feels like in a lot of ways, it's like how Tarantino's films are these mishmashes of all these other great films, and he makes this whole new great thing. James Cameron's kind of done that with T1. He's like all these films that shaped him and that he loved, he's made into this whole new, fresh, original thing, and like I love it.
And I will just say, obviously, it was early days, and this was like Arnie's early days of acting. I don't feel like he walked robotic enough in the first one. I feel like he was like, there was a few scenes where he was just walking around where it seemed like he was just walking around trying to seem like that, while the second one he had more of like the posture of a robot. I don't know how to describe it.
You know, like the scene where you see him walking, you see his dong waving.
Actually, my first note on Terminator was Terminator
Arnie's
Dong. Terminator Dong.
It's Arnie's dong.
That was my first note.
Oh, it's great.
And man, I was so glad though when he got the leather jacket in the first one, because that first outfit he got was like the big jacket that he gets from that person.
Oh,
like,
I love it.
Oh, really? It doesn't look as badass as I guess when I watched
it doesn't,
Terminator 2 the first time. So that's like I've always just pictured him in the leather jacket. So when he shows up in this big 80s
But that's
jacket,
the kind of that's the kind of thing. It's like, well, to get into it, Terminator 2 has so much more iconography, whereas I love the fact in Terminator 1 it's like this hulking beast in this like he's in like robes, like these tattered, awful clothes, and it's like because he doesn't care what he looks like. He's just like he's a pilgrim in a holy land.
Terminator 1 has some really great scenes. I really love the gun shop scene.
Yeah,
It's just like, I think
so good.
Uzi 9mm.
Like plasma rifle. Hey, just what you see, buddy.
Anything else?
Phased plasma rifle in the 40-watt range.
Hey, just what you see, pal.
The Uzi 9mm.
You know your weapons, buddy. Any one of these is ideal for home defense.
At home defense. It's like it feels very American.
It does.
That's the scene that terrified me as a kid because like, I just remember when he's like, "Hey, you can't do that," and he's like, "Wrong." I remember just being as a kid, I'm like, "He just shot this innocent man," and this thing scarred me of like, this dude is pure evil. He's just done this horrible crime. He's just killed this innocent man for no reason, and like it really did kind of like cement in me like the evil of the Terminator.
Yeah. Especially because the guy's being nice to him. He's like, "Oh man, yeah, I'll get that gun for you," like this and
Yeah,
that.
you really know.
It's not just like a random person. It's just
There's
maybe scared
also
of
this,
working in retail.
like as bad as the surgery scene is on his face where he's fixing his arm. That scene's really cool. I really like it.
Yeah.
Like it's really creepy and scary, but it holds up really well. Like they did a really good job with that scene.
Yeah, that looks great.
And
there's so many.
The scene where he crashes the truck and he's on fire, like that holds up really well until the stop motion starts. Like there's this guy rolling around in the fire. Like they set some dude on fire for that scene. They had to have.
Yep.
And it's just terrifying.
That thing, even the way he's on fire laying there and his head still turns to look at her, like in her direction, like it's still like, you can't stop him. It's great.
Yeah. And obviously, like the scene where the Terminator comes into their house and like Ginger's dancing around making like food, and he just gets like, "Don't make me bust you up, pal."
Yeah, that boyfriend is like a stand-up dude. Like he's taking him on. He doesn't care.
He just gets knocked down. He's just keeps getting up. Good for him.
How many times in the 80s did somebody have their headphones on too loud though?
Too many.
I feel like that happens a lot.
That's why the slasher thing happened, because serial killers was like, everyone's listening to music. I can kill freely. Man. Grana, why is Terminator 2 the best film?
Terminator 2. I know you guys have said it's bloated. I know it's longer, but I just feel like Terminator 2 is the movie Terminator 1 wanted to be, but it has the budget and it has the technology to match it. And I just feel like James Cameron then went on to just, in every scene, he's making everything as cool as it can possibly be. Like Arnie walking through the mall with a gun in a rose box.
Rose
Like that
box.
is just so cool. Reloading that shotgun with one arm.
Yeah.
Like that is the most iconic reload I mean, it's not a reload, he's rechambering the shell or whatever, but like that is the most iconic thing in cinema.
It is, yeah.
It's
nothing is
so cool. Like Terminator 2 is cool. Like it's just there's so much stuff in this film.
That's like the best way to describe it. It's such a cool film. Everything in it is cool.
Yep.
Yeah, like I just feel like James Cameron, like every little thing that is happening, he dials the cool up to 11. Like did he have to reload that shotgun that way? Probably not. There's probably some other thing he could have done, taking his hand off the wheel and reloading it normally. But like just that one arm is just so cool.
Flicking it around and reloading.
I feel like a lot of people have tried that and hurt themselves doing it too.
I know I have. I know I have.
With all your guns. I'm sure you heard, like, there's a thing where apparently he hit Edward Furlong in one scene and, like, concussed him. You gotta love him for trying.
So that's the thing. Watching them again now, like chronologically, it was interesting to watch the start of number 2 and realize sort of, oh wow, you can see it as the T-1000's the good guy at the start if you don't know how, and I never had that thing. Obviously, I don't remember the first time I watched it, but I've just always grown up knowing he's a bad guy. But the first 20 minutes, like he dresses as the cop, he's talking polite to people. You don't see him kill the cop. You only see him like sort of knock him out. So it's like you do think, oh, this is the good guy to Arnie's bad guy. And when they're in the mall and Arnie's coming after him too, it's such a cool play on it that I'd never really gotten before watching the first one now before the second one. And watching it now, I was like, oh, that's really cool how they did that.
Terminator 1 does that as well with Kyle Reese though. Like you're not sure if he's telling the truth. You're not sure if he's the good guy or the bad guy. Like it's not obvious in that movie either.
Yeah,
No.
True.
I would have loved to be there in the cinema in 91 and seen that scene where it's like they come up and you're like, what's going to happen? And to just have that moment, be like, holy crap, Arnie's good now. Like that would have been so much fun to participate in.
Like when he says, "Come with me if you want to live," I would have freaked out if I was like watching the cinema. And obviously, if you probably hadn't seen trailers, because I'm sure the trailers spoiled it.
Apparently, only the final trailer spoiled it. Like I heard about this a bit, but there was one final trailer that said something like he's back for good, and that was the spoiler for
cheeky nod.
Yeah.
And like that's that great line where it's not parodying, but it's perfectly playing on it. So it's like it's a perfect sequel move. It uses the same line, it switches the roles around, and it's like it functions so well. Whereas then I think does he? No, because then Nick Stahl says it's slightly different in Terminator 3. Like, you want to live? Come on! And it's like, what?
It doesn't
why
hold up.
do that?
She'll be back just doesn't.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. We talked about it. We brought it up earlier quickly, but the scene in the causeway is so good. Like it's such a iconic scene, and even watching it now, it feels real. Like you feel like you're watching this truck going down a causeway, chasing this kid on a motorbike.
Because they did, right? Like they actually did. Drive a truck down there.
It looks so good. It holds up, and it's such a cool scene. And when the truck just flies off the bridge and just lands and just keeps going after him, it's just relentless, and it's so cool.
Arnie jumping the motorcycle and there's just sparks spraying everywhere.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you bottomed the crap out of that thing because you weigh a ton. But man, this is cool.
It's like in The Dark Knight when the truck flips, and it's like then obviously all of Mad Max Fury Road. It's just these moments of practical effect that are like they make such a difference, and everyone remembers it because of like it doesn't look like crap, and they're so sparing. It's like again, coming back to number 3, where the crane chase scene is just explosion after explosion, that really sort of dulls, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, I've seen this. But by having this truck come off, it's like, it's the cherry on the best Sunday you've ever had. It's like, oh, you don't need to do that. You could just show a scene where it's now in there. But by having this weird, cool practical effect, it just makes it that much better.
He gets like the top of it cut off and he just like pushes it out.
Yeah, and he shoves it out of the way.
So cool.
Well, they do that with a hearse in number 3.
I know.
That scene is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate the effects in 2. Like, obviously, like, you've got this T-1000 that's a wholly CG character at times, and that should look really bad. But I don't know what magic they were performing, like what voodoo magic they had to perform in 1991 or whatever it is to get this to work. But like that character still holds up in almost every scene. There's a few scenes where it's like, oh, this is not amazing, but they also used a lot of practical effects for that. Like when he's getting shot, like that's not CG; it's actual effects.
Him getting shot.
Yeah, so James Cameron being groundbreaking, he actually shot Robert Patrick.
was
And
gonna
in
say-
that nuclear dream scene, he actually nuclear bombed a whole city, killed thousands upon
Oh
thousands.
man,
They
that
actually
scene sucks.
they did actually nuclear bomb a miniature.
Did they really?
No, not nuclear bomb, but
I was like,
they
holy
did,
crap.
they did build a miniature and bomb it. Apparently, that's like one of the most true to life depictions of a nuclear holocaust.
Is horrifying.
Yeah,
Like
it
him
is.
just
It is.
melting away and like
Yep.
holding onto the chain link fence. It's so iconic. Like I just want to address the intro. I love the intro of the playground just on fire while the theme plays for like 2 minutes, and it's just showing like the swing set on
Yeah.
fire and like showing the playground. It's such cool imagery. I really like the intro to number 2, and the theme's so good. I love the theme song.
I think the theme's potentially like the most iconic theme, like just next to maybe like the Imperial March. Like as soon as you hear that dun 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 dun, everybody knows what that is. Everybody knows what's coming. Everybody's into it.
It's so good.
And I think on that point of like the nuclear bomb looking realistic, he does it like we take it for granted now because we've had so many like video games that are apocalypse based and movies that really sort of revel in how cool it is. But every time I watch these films, I'm shocked at how awful the apocalypse actually looks. Like the battle scenes in the future, they look so terrifying. There's nothing cool about them. The scene in Terminator 1 where Kyle Reese is walking back through their their settlement, like there's nothing cool about it. There's no cool little shacks made up where it's like, oh yeah, I want to have the apocalypse, like how the Millennial Dream.
I want a cubby house in the apocalypse.
Yeah, it actually just looks like this horrible, horrible place where it's like they're living in little like concrete slits watching fire in TV. And it's like the bombs, the bombs don't look overly cool. It's like it's just this blinding flash and an awful fire. It's like he does such a great job of actually making the terrible things look terrible, and he doesn't try to make it look cool in any way. I'm like, it's really, I really appreciate it every time I see it.
Yeah. And going on from that, like Sarah Connor's trauma is such a good framing for this movie. I think like it works so well with her, like with her narration of what's going on, but also just her character. Like I think they handle it pretty well. Like,
Phenomenally, yeah.
yeah.
Man,
And just like how detached she is when she's finally free and she's with her son. Like this is the thing she's wanted, and she's over on this table on her own, carving no fate into it because she's going to go kill Miles Dyson. Like while he's playing with the Terminator. Like it's just her. She's obviously messed up, and we can see why because they show us this Holocaust that she keeps dreaming of.
And it's really cool because it kind of has two main characters in a way. Like because she has her own growth. Like that moment where she goes to Miles Dyson's house and doesn't kill him is like her sort of character reversal, right? She sort of hits this wall. I have to change. But then at the same time, John Connor is also the sort of the main character. Like he's sort of gradually learning that he doesn't need to be a street kid anymore. He can have a father. So it's really interesting that it has these two sort of point of views and they both work in tandem, and it doesn't feel. But they work, they really sort of aid each other. They never get in the way, or it never feels clunky. It's really cool.
It's very well balanced, I feel.
I will say, I love the escape from the mental facility. Like
so good.
Like it's
really
such, it's so cool. Her like getting the paperclip, letting the creepy dude lick her face. It's so disturbing.
Jesus
Then she gets up, she beats the shit out of him. And I don't know why I said this to like my wife, but the vision of her like with the baton running down the hallway, she's such a badass. Like she just seems like she's this cool. Like I can take on all these people.
It's that little she's got a little leap in a step. She like sort of leaps forward, flips it around so it's like behind her, and it's like she can kill everyone in this room. Like that one, and it's just these little moments. There's no time wasted. Like, look how badass she is. She just does these little moves. And I was like, shit.
I love getting the syringe and sticking it in the drainer.
I'll be full of this shit. You know I will.
And I love the line. Where he's like, "You won't do it. You can't." And she's like, I think everyone's dead already."
Yeah.
He's like, let her in. She's nuts.
Oh, it's so good. I just I can't I think this film, I can't understate how much Terminator 2 has a visual recognition. Like we sort of talked about it with The Matrix, how when you think of like a certain style of that action, it's like black coats and kung fu in the air. That's associated with this film, and like how there's so many iconic scenes from this, and even just like the blue tinge on everybody at all times. But it's like the biker guy in a leather jacket, like that image has been used a billion times in everything since then. The Causeway chase has been recycled and things like there's a whole mission in San Andreas about it. Like every moment, like the walking down the hallway with the roses, like getting crushed underfoot. Obviously the liquid nitrogen, like shooting the shattered body. There's just every scene in this film is like stands on its own as this incredibly iconic thing. It's like ingrained in pop culture. And it's just crazy, like this one film's made so many. And then obviously you've got all the quotes. You're just like,
Hasta la vista, baby.
This might be the most quoted movie ever. Like,
yeah,
his finishing one-liners are so good, and that has been parodied to hell. But I love it too. Like, I love like Rainier Wolfcastle in The Simpsons. Like, "Ice to meet you." Like, I thought in my memory that's what Arnie says to the T-1000 when he shoots him when he's frozen. It's not, but in my head that's the
but
real
it could
line.
be. If it was Terminator 3, it would be what he says.
You're right, actually. Yes.
Yep. And then he'd wink at the camera and be like, "Ah."
Yeah, in case you guys missed it. Yeah, it's crazy how recognizable the film is. Like, yeah, it boggles my mind.
Man, I'll just say though, this thing that's always, even from when I was a kid, the line where John Connor says,
"Did you call moi a dipshit?"
It's like the most douchebag thing in the world.
He's
like,
so obnoxious.
And like that dude was coming to help him because he was cool as hell, but then they just
they
beat the shit out of him. I feel bad for those two gym junkies.
But it adds, right? Like he's this little street punk. Like he's a shitty kid.
Yeah.
I really wanted that hacking machine that he uses to just stick stuff in. He's
easy money.
Easy money,
says the bank
Let's have
manager.
some fun. I just love all of his screaming.
His voice breaking. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
So Edward Furlong, is he the best actor of all time?
I think he's good in these movies. I don't think he's the best actor of all time, obviously, but I can understand people's problem, and I can understand people being annoyed by like his voice breaking and stuff. But he's supposed to be 10, which he does not look 10.
Which is weird. Yeah, I thought he was supposed to be 13. Like,
he feels real. He feels like a 13-year-old kid. Like when I watched it, especially as a kid, he seems like a kid going through that. So
and Sarah Connor's supposed to be 18 in the first one, which doesn't gel with me either. Like, they should have just aged everyone 5 years. I don't know what difference it would have made.
Yeah, good question.
But anyway,
so he's meant to be 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
Riding around a dirt bike on the road.
Yeah, it's weird. And then obviously in Terminator 3, they talk about how he made out with Claire Danes' character at some friend's party, like the day before that all happened.
It's a 10-year-old.
Yes, it's like actually, so these two 10-year-olds, I guess, are making out at a party.
I was still scared of girls at 10 years old. Like,
yeah, like, maybe that's what they did in America in the 90s, but...
So how old's he meant to be in number 3?
Oh, someone could do the maths, I'm sure.
I think the timeline... No, because they say 10 years ago, so he'd be 20.
Yeah, that doesn't suit as well.
Nah, yeah. See, I thought you guys were going to have problems with Edward Furlong. I really like Edward Furlong. I've got a real soft spot for him. And it's one of those things, like he, in a way, he could have been like one of those great child actors, but unfortunately he fell away and became...
he
fell into
obviously...
substance abuse and,
that's right, substance abuse and stuff.
Yeah,
but...
and there's like a lot of problems with his manager and money getting taken and legal issues. So it's like he became a victim of that system, which sucks. Is like I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but Detroit Rock City is a really funny film with him in it. And he plays like this idiot stoner, but he's really good. It's like I'll always wonder what could have been.
What about Arnie? I felt like I had a new respect for Arnie after watching this again. Like, I know he gets a bit of a hard time because he's got the strange accent, but he's not the greatest actor in the whole world, obviously. But like, there's still a
role for him.
Yeah, it is. Like, it definitely it uses his accent well and uses his acting skills well. But like, there's a skill to acting in action too, I think, and he just is amazing.
He has that presence. Like, he just is a star. Like, he's such an action star. Just his whole vibe on, like, in every scene. Like, he steals a scene, like, you always watch him, what he's doing and the way he interacts, and he feels real. But man, the fight with the T-1000 in the final scene's like brutal.
Yeah. And in that scene, like, he's just getting destroyed, and it's like this hulking beast of metal getting beaten by this scrawny little Robert Patrick. It's like, wow.
Yeah. With him
yeah.
like ramming his head in, it's
Yeah.
It's really sad. Yeah, I don't know, like, because we touched on that last episode, where this is really the perfect role for him, where it's like it's stilted acting, but it's like with Keanu Reeves, there is this physicality in his acting, and like Arnie does. I think Arnie does bring something else to it, and Robert Patrick brings a whole other thing to the T-1000. But I do wonder, because they originally wanted to cast, at one point they wanted to cast O.J. Simpson as the Terminator.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of like this. Yeah, it would have been pretty close to home.
You know, the reason they did it, though, was because everybody loved him at that time. He was too lovable to be the T-800.
And that was part of the reason I think James Cameron wanted him. They're like, we'll have this guy who everyone loves be this villain, and it'll mess with their whole perspectives. And obviously,
he really decided to take that to heart, and
he did. He got really into method acting.
He's like, you know what?
He went back in time.
The Terminator.
But so it would have been weird to see what he was sort of like, and see a less physical actor doing it. And like, would it have been? Because I think if you add even a little bit more emotion, like in Terminator 3, he has more emotion, and I think it's to its detriment. Like there's a lot more dialogue with Arnie, and I don't think it's as and he feels more authoritarian through sort of his character, and I don't think that works. He's better, I think, where he is, like I said, Luke, this hulking presence. Like you think about the scene where he's on the motorbike looking for John on the bike. He is just like he just controls the city. He just pulls up on this motorcycle, and it's like, no, you wouldn't go near him because it's like this dude's terrifying. And just that sort of, without saying anything, without just like, he just snaps away and sees him down on the causeway, so just skids to the stop. Like it's purely physicality that really works for him. He's never had a film that's been like a hard-hitting character piece to be able to show off his acting. So I feel like I can't fairly say if he's good or not.
But I feel like a lesser actor couldn't pull off True Lies. Whether you think they're great movies or not, they're still very popular. They're still very liked. Like he pulls off True Lies, he pulls off Kindergarten Cop, he pulls off Twins.
I love True
Lies.
Lies.
A lesser actor doesn't pull those movies off. They're not as popular as they are.
He does sort of, he does.
Love True Lies.
I'd have to see True Lies again, and I haven't even seen Twins. But yeah, you're right. Something like Kindergarten Cop, he really does lean into that kind of like, I am a bit clunky with everything, and so he feels. Yeah, he does. You're right. So I guess a lesser actor would either avoid that or overdo it. He does have a nice balance of like fish out of water constantly, but that really does fit it. Have you guys seen Collateral Damage?
No.
So I mean, that was like it came out in the early 2000s. It was a big flop, but I remember I saw that film so many times. It was always on TV, and he's just kind of he's kind of playing an everyman. But he's like a firefighter, but he's like, it's just a weird role. It's like he's trying to play much more just a normal guy, but at the same time, you can't detach the fact that he's Arnold Schwarzenegger doing it. So it's just kind of strange. But I don't know. I do really like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a movie star. Like he plays Commandos and Predators so well.
Yeah, for sure. But I think T2 is his best role. Like it's just
probably his best work. Yeah,
I agree. I think T2 is like the perfect example of how to use him, and I think he's great in it. Like it's the perfect film for him, and I think it's the best of the trilogy. I do. I
agree.
And like honestly, like the ending is so like the thumbs up, like going down in lava is so iconic.
It should be corny. It should be corny, but I feel like it does enough to like earn it.
Yeah.
Like it even earns. Yeah. It's a bad line, like I now know why you cry, but it earns it. I think that line. Yeah. It earns it.
It does.
I think the stuff with the crying isn't the best
strange
stuff I've heard, but I do like the other things that he starts using, like the lines that he says and everything like that. I think that's cool, but yeah.
I really like it. That scene where they're at the table and he's like, "Why do you cry?" It's like that's kind of the first moment
that's fine. That's fine.
He's exploring it, right? He's trying to learn as a machine, and he's like, it's a pivotal moment.
Yeah, I think maybe just the "I now know why you cry" scene isn't.
I like that line.
It's not bad.
I recommend people watch on YouTube the director's cut scenes. They flesh out the learning side of Arnie a lot more, and they're really good.
I like there's obviously that scene where he's trying to smile. It's really, really funny.
Yes, it's really funny.
There's even that scene that it's weird they cut it because it's such a great scene. I remember where
they reset the chip in his head.
Yeah, they're fixing it. And like I remember watching the behind the scenes of how they did that and how they had to like almost make like this weird fake mirror so the camera didn't get in it. It's like so much time and effort went into it. And it looks so good, and it gets cut. It's like, oh, people should see that.
I'm so disappointed that scene's on it because I think it's really good for a lot of reasons. Like Sarah Connor has this chance to destroy the Terminator, and she so wants to go for it, and it's John that jumps in front of this hammer and stops it. Like it's highly recommended if you haven't seen it. I think it's a very good scene, and it's really disappointing that it was cut because to me it's really good.
Yeah, it's really good.
No, I need to watch these scenes. They sound really cool. I really want to watch the alternate ending. That sounds really good.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Like, even though we said the film's bloated, I would still watch like a 3.5-hour cut of Terminator 2. Like,
Yeah,
I'd be keen for that.
I was surprised when you guys said it's bloated because, like, by today's action movie standard, it's kind of a short. Like, it's not that long. Like, it's nothing to go to see a 3-hour movie in the cinema these days.
It's 2 hours and 20. I think just after the first one's like an hour and a half. So I think coming into the second one, I was
hour
like,
45. So yeah, you got like a solid half hour.
Yeah.
I think you're right. There are some moments that drag a little bit.
I do like how he just kneecaps everyone because he says you can't kill people. So he just kneecaps all these cops while he's just walks up, boom, boom, boom.
I feel like that security guard.
Casualties.
Yeah, the security guard at the mental institution, like, is never going to be the same. Like, he gets just.
Yeah. No, you get both your knees shot. You're not walking again.
Yeah.
Even like the scene where he's got a minigun and he just like shoots all the cars and stuff. I'm like, someone's gonna die in that. There's no way that a stray bullet hasn't just like,
somebody's getting pretty injured,
torn someone's throat out.
Yep.
Oh, the grenade launcher. I don't know. That grenade launcher sound. It's just that's so good.
He hits the guy running away. You see him go like whack into him. He's like, oh, that's great.
I just love how he walks up to the soldier and just takes their mask off, and they're just like, oh.
That's so good. We have to mention it, that scene in the mental hospital escape where T-1000 just like slides through the bars.
Yeah,
like that scene is amazing.
It's still really good, and apparently people are so
the gun gets caught, and he's just like, oh, and then pulls.
It's a great thing, and it's like, and it's got Terminator is full of those moments. Like every single scene, every single line has relevance in the long term. Nothing is done to wait, and maybe this is a reason why the film's not bloated. I don't know, but nothing is sort of done in there is wasted. Every scene that goes on, like just it comes back full circle. Like the fact that he's a hacker means he can hack in things later and he can do this stuff.
Yeah.
Little moments like that where you see his sort of weaknesses. It's like, okay, so he can't actually morph other devices to this. It just sets up these characters, like sets up things that are fulfilled later. And it's really, really good storytelling.
Yep. No. Absolutely fantastic movie. Does anyone else have anything they want to add about Terminator? Anyone got any existential questions about time travel they want to pose?
I don't even want to get into time travel because it's hard to get your head around. All I'll say is that, man, Robert Patrick's an amazing Terminator. T-1000's like horrifying, you know, like it was like really scared me as a child, and I think he plays that role perfectly. He doesn't feel human, like he feels like this slick, like futuristic, not even robotic. He just feels like this weird killing machine. It's
yeah.
I mean,
he's kind of
the dude's going up against Arnie in his prime, and he's like pulling it off. Like
he's holding his own.
Yeah.
He's got that weird sort of charm where he's like, "See, that's a nice bike." Like it feels like this weird stilted cop would say something like that, and so it's entirely believable.
Instead of just, "I like your gun."
Yeah, maybe we didn't talk about her enough. She should not have been a Terminator. She's just a supermodel that gets given the role. She's got no acting prowess at all.
Yeah,
it's a real misstep, and especially coming from like these big leaps taken. Arnie's given this chance as this action hero, and he makes a career from it. Robert Patrick, unfortunately, was typecast because he was probably too good. And then they've got this supermodel who's like, well, they're not great actors. They don't have a reputation. She's just pretty. I'm like, it's just bad news.
Just picture for 1 second Robert Patrick or Arnold Schwarzenegger in their respective Terminator roles, like licking a bit of blood and then like orgasming, basically, where they're like, oh, that's John Connor blood. That's some good shit, right?
Well, Arnie talks a lot about, climaxing during weightlifting and stuff. I can imagine him being like, it's the best feeling ever. I do want to say that haircuts haven't aged well in either of these films.
What's wrong with the hair in Terminator 2?
Edward Furlong's
or one.
It's not really
that's
evolved,
90s.
Well, what is it then?
90s.
It's an abomination.
It's 90s, like you watch it and it's such a 90s cut, and 80s, it's such 80s haircuts.
There's so much 80s hair in that movie.
They're terrible,
great.
right? In both of them,
great.
it's like they're just awful haircuts.
Yeah.
Why did people do that? I also have a real issue with Miles Dyson's breathing.
No, I love that scene.
That's all. It's always stuck with me. It's always stuck with me as like it was.
Oh.
It seems intense, like he is. I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels real in a weird way because
I
it's
don't
not normal. But
As soon as that scene came on, I started doing it. My wife was not into it, but I don't know. Miles Dyson's great in this movie. It's unfortunate he's kind of the token black guy that gets killed, but
Yeah.
he's really good, and I like that scene.
I don't know. I feel like he's just really kind of weenie. Like he
He's
really
a
just
computer programmer.
Yeah, but
He's not a super soldier. Like,
no, I'm not expecting him to go badass or anything. He really is kind of like the wet blanket on the party. Again, Edward Furlong's
Okay.
10 years. He's 10 years old, whereas Miles Dyson's just like, hey, I brought my family from out of town.
He's 10 years old, but he spent his childhood riding around in helicopters, blowing shit up. Like,
Miles Dyson's working on a mechanical arm that no one knows where it came from, as if he's not. Come on. You can't just tell me he's like, oh, I'm just a computer. No, he knows some weird stuff's going on.
But he's just had this badass woman come in and almost murder him in front of his kids. It's a bit. He's
Such a great
going to
scene.
be
Wow.
a bit shell shocked, and yeah.
Yeah, no, every time I watch it, he's the worst. He is the worst part of that film, I think.
nah, I love him. I disagree. I think he's good,
enjoy
and I enjoy the scene where he's got the switch and he tells the cops, like, I don't know how much longer I can hold this.
I mean, that's a really good way to end it. Where and his breathing sort of slows down. And that's a good way, I guess, of like visual or sort of telling that
Visualizing
story,
his health state. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool for that, but it just it's like screeching in the back of my head.
I always like.
No, love it.
Actually, I have one last hole to poke. Do you guys find it a little bit convenient that in both Terminator 1 and 2, they end up in a factory where they can kill the Terminator? By sheer chance, they're just like the perfect place to kill this thing.
It's not by chance. Arnie says, take the next exit. Like, I think Arnie's got a plan in the second one.
You reckon?
I like to think so. I have to believe.
I mean, no, if we're going to criticize Toy Story 3 for having a claw in a bloody garbage
That's
chute,
what I'm saying. I had that thought
we need to
process.
be consistent here. And if we're going to
And that is
criticize the dog in Toy Story 1, we need to criticize the weird monkey face that Arnold Schwarzenegger has when he's like got the robotic eye.
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny where Terminator 1 sort of makes sense. Like, I can give it a one-off, where it's like that's how you end. You're running, you're escaping, you end up here. Whereas Terminator 2, I did find it a little bit convenient. It's like they end up in another big factory. This one has liquid metal, or like molten metal to melt them. Like, okay.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess you're right.
It's such a cool scenery, though.
It is, and
like as soon as I see like a factory like that with love, Terminator 2 is the first thing I think of straight away.
You just give your thumbs up to people, and you're like,
and I jump in. I jump in. With
just like,
thumbs up.
not again. There's so much paperwork for these suicides. Yeah, the film earns it, so I'm like, I don't have a big hang up about it, but it's a hole I can poke.
That's the thing. Like, you could get hung up about a lot of things in these movies, especially when time travel is involved. But
do you guys have an issue with the whole by going back to the past you create the events? I've never had a problem with that, but some people do.
I like it. I
think it's fun. Like, I don't know. It's not the scientific way time travel works, probably, if time travel did work.
Is there a scientific way for time travel to work?
Have you seen Primer?
Yeah, I don't remember anything that happens in it. I don't think anyone does.
Primer's like the wanky way to say I
It's just
understand.
Exactly. It's a lot of cool jargon.
No, I think it's a lot of fun. I always think of that Futurama scene where he becomes his own grandma. And it's one of the best Futurama episodes, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I always liked it. I know a lot of people get hung up. It's like, but how can you go back and cause it? It's like, it falls apart, I guess, if you fall into tandem universes, because it's like, if they're in the future of the first universe, they shouldn't have been able to do that. But that's where Terminator 3 goes wrong.
No, Terminator 3 goes wrong in a lot of places.
What about Looper, where they're like shooting him in the leg and then he loses his legs in the future? Like,
I love that scene.
That's such a horrifying scene, man.
Yeah.
It's like scary. Like, it's really horrific.
It's the one that makes the
how
least
they're torturing
logical
him.
sense to me, though.
You reckon?
Yep. Anyway,
both
this
of the
isn't a
same.
Looper podcast. Maybe we'll come back to that.
But there's no Looper trilogy.
One day.
We could do like Looper, Jumper. There's another something per movie.
Is it in Slapper?
Tigger.
All right,
Tigger movie.
we're getting on tangents. I think we've done Terminator to death. Unless you guys want to go back in time and do it all over again, we're done. One of the greatest action series of all time in the can.
Nice work, guys.
Yeah.
So what have we got next, Conan?
I'm going to do the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy. So we'll do Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End.
So keen. Love these
So
movies.
keen.
I'm interested. I watched Shaun of the Dead for the first time a few months ago. I watched Hot Fuzz once years ago, and I remember not liking it, but wanting to watch it after I watched Shaun of the Dead recently. I wanted to go back and watch Hot Fuzz, and I've never watched At World's End. So
You're in for a treat, in my opinion.
I'm very keen to talk about At World's End the most.
Same.
But cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on another Good, Bad, Worst podcast. Like us on Facebook, find us on iTunes, do all those good things to help us out, and we'll catch you next time.
talk to the hand.
I'll be back.
Very good. Of course, we had to get those.
Hasta la
money quotes.
vista, baby.
Oh,
What's the one in the apartment? F off, dickwad.
Oh man,
Oh,
man!
What's the
Everything that
What is your
everything that
address
male
there?
stripper says just cracks me up. Patience, honey. Wait, bitch. Wait your turn.
oh,
Oh, that's terrible. It's so bad.
awful.